All right, let's get started. It's good to see everybody. Welcome to Tuesday night. It's a great turnout. Good to see everybody. I'm James Goldstene, Alpha Echo 6, Juliet Golf. We will do introductions on Zoom and in person first. Then we'll go over club business, and then Bill, N6HA, is our keynote speaker tonight. Thank you. We appreciate that. And he did put together what looks like an amazing presentation on space and satellite communication. So that's going to be fun. So we'll get all the club business out of the way. And then Bill said each slide will take him about an hour. And how many slides are there? Yeah. So, all right. So let's pass the microphone around.
Okay, I'm KE6RMN Ken. I do the newsletter.
And I'm Hank, K6HUH.
I'm Bill, November 6 Hotel Alpha, tonight's speaker.
Mike, Kilo Oscar 6, Charlie, India, Lima.
I'm Judd, W6 Toss Green Salad.
And I'm George, Norway 6 Yankee Golf.
I'm Bob, November 6 Papa Golf, Quebec.
And Neil, Kilo Lima 7 Hotel, Quebec, Romeo.
And I'm Kishore, Kilo Romeo 6 Romeo Alpha Oscar.
Walter, Kilo 6 Hotel, Tango Delta.
I'm Jim, Kilo Foxtrot 6 Juliet Foxtrot.
And I'm Jim, N6 EU. I'm a new member.
Welcome.
Tim, Kilo Delta 6 Mike Delta Victor.
Gary, Kilo Golf 6 Sierra Mike X-Ray.
Oh, got some other people over there. Okay.
Mike, Kilo 7 Golf Foxtrot Mike.
Phil, Kilo Delta 6 Romeo Mike.
Bob, KF6 ABC.
Glenn, KM6 RTQ.
Art, KD6 GBY.
Dave, KK6 MVJ. I joined last month.
We get that gentleman at the back table?
All right, welcome, Dave, KK6 MVJ. It's Wilson, your treasurer, N6EMF.
The back row?
Yeah, I think we did.
Everybody's good.
Okay.
And on Zoom, can you introduce yourselves, please?
And you missed me.
Carl, November 6, Charlie Kilo Victor.
And there's also Gert, Kilo 6 Zulu Golf Alpha, secretary and ticket person.
Carl, say it again so we check the sound. Carl, go ahead.
Okay, sorry I stepped on Gert. November 6, Charlie Kilo Victor, Carl and Wilton.
And Stephen, K6BZ, go ahead and introduce yourself.
K6B. Hello, everyone.
And I'm not sure who's on the iPad. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Oh, it's Margaret. Okay. You're muted, Margaret, but we know who you are. And Bill, Kilo 6, Kilo Romeo, Quebec, our newest net controller. Hey, Bill.
Hey, everyone. Like James said, Bill, K6KRQ.
Did we miss anybody? Oh, where'd the microphone go? Okay.
Okay, hi, I'm Carol, KP4MD. I'm Vice President for another year, also Webmaster and ARL Sacramento Valley Section Manager. Thank you.
And Carol recently appointed me Assistant Section Manager. So if there are any issues, I think you're supposed to come to me first. Does everybody have a ticket for the giveaway? Okay, Gert, we have a few people who don't have tickets yet. So near the end of tonight's presentation, this will earn you, if your number is chosen, your choice of a V&A a spectrum analyzer, an ICOM handheld, or some coax. It does seem that coax has been very popular. So you get to pick one of those if your number is drawn. Okay. Yeah, 213. I think it's ABR. Yeah. Thank you all who brought food donations. I think it's great that the temple is allowing us to use this facility. It's nice not to have to drive around between the libraries, the scheduling. When Phil worked so hard for the past couple of years trying to find a reliable location. This is a location we can use for these meetings, for Get on the Air events, and for classes. Give him a change. Hold on a second. Thank you all for the food donations, which are appreciated. For next month, they are looking for, and this is for Trellis Gardens. They give money to a local food closet from a local, I think, Catholic church in the Arden area. And they also give money to Trellis Gardens, which is transitional housing for women and children. They have 17 cottages. And so the Trellis Gardens is looking for tuna, pasta, sauce, small jars, jams, jellies, top ramen, grocery store gift cards, anything. So this is the kind of thing they're looking for. So if you bring food donations, think about those things. It's greatly appreciated. Last month, a local ham who is getting out of the ham business, he's letting his license expire, donated a bunch of equipment to the club, and I just want to thank him. Gary Stewart, November 6, November Echo, Echo. He's a retired pathologist, and he donated to the club a Kenwood 590, an ICOM 7300, and a Kenwood THD 72 handheld, which Bill says is great for satellite communication. So, and a bunch of other stuff. So thank you, Gary, for doing that. Did you all see the newsletter? Ken works hard on the newsletter. Do you guys read it? Okay. It was a big one. Thank you, Ken. You're being thanked. He said, oh, okay. Okay. So I want to encourage all of us to join our Wednesday night nets, the 2-meter net, the 10-meter net, and slow scan TV. That's Wednesday nights. And then on Saturdays, the 40-meter net at 3 p.m. A lot of you participate, but the more the merrier. It's a lot of fun. Bill Shocknesse is speaking tonight, and then our next meeting a month from now, April 1st, Eric Schwartz, who's the CEO of Elecraft, is going to speak to us. So that's pretty cool. I assume he'll come in through Zoom, but who knows? He's not that far away. You're expecting him to come through that door anytime. I don't think there's going to be giveaways. Although N6PGQ is hoping he makes an announcement. What is it that you want him to announce? Remote software. Yeah. Okay. At one of the big events. Yes. Yeah. And then Tuesday, May 6th, so this is 2 months out now, Howard Bernstein, who founded the Long Island CW Club, will talk to us about. So that'll be that's kind of cool. We can't hear you.
James, I apologize for being the class clown tonight, but I just have to say you sure are a very connected new president. So keep up the good work.
Well, because I know you. Thank you. EMF. On March 22nd, this was Bob N6PGQ's idea. There is, and this was in the newsletter, and Carol put out a really cool announcement. The North American SSB Sprint, Sideman Sprint Contest from 5 to 9 p.m. on Saturday, March 22nd, and we're going to do it right here. We're going to set up 2 or 3 radios. If the weather's nice, we'll go right out here into the patio and the garden out here. If the weather's not great. We'll just open the French doors. We can operate inside and put the keep the antennas outside. So we'll probably order pizza, and we will order pizza. People will. Everybody eat pizza? Yeah. All right. It's dinner time. And so that's open to everybody. So if you have a friend who doesn't have a license, who's curious about it, have them come, because they can operate under our license. Field day. All right. We need volunteers for field day, which is June 28th through June 29th. We need somebody to take the lead. We probably need a team of 2, 3, 4 people who are willing to volunteer. So if you are willing to do that, let me and Carol know either tonight or by email. If we do not have volunteers, then we won't do it. So it doesn't happen without people chipping in. So think about whether you can make a commitment to help getting it organized. We'll do it at the Rio Linda. What's that place called? Rio Linda? The Dry Creek Ranch in Rio Linda again, and we're reserving that space, but we need somebody to kind of herd the cats, so to speak. Our next breakfast is March 15th at Brookfields. And a couple weeks ago, when Bill was net control, we had our once a month practice session on the backup repeater. How'd that go, Bill?
It was a character builder, to be sure.
Okay, it was.
Yeah, but I think I got through it okay.
You did get through it okay. What we learned is that you really can't run both repeaters at the same time. And we had too many cooks in the kitchen turning things on and off, and I think I'm not sure how to describe it, Carol. It was some confusion, yeah. So, but that's why we do this. That's why we practice, because that backup repeater is actually for emergency use. If our main repeater goes down, we want to be able to know, we want to have a backup, which is what it's for. Because our main repeater on Pilot Hill, where is it? Pine Hill is in the PG&E network, and power outages are not uncommon. So if that goes down, we have the backup repeater. All right. Any questions so far? I just have a few more things, and then we'll go through. Neil? Not to my knowledge. So we need volunteers to, I think Art made an initial request. Okay. But we haven't heard back yet. Can you take, Gert, can you get the microphone over to Dave, please? Yeah. Oh. Just a short press. Not yet. Short press. No. No.
There we go. I'm just
Okay.
not familiar. I'm familiar with the ones on the switch on the bottom.
Yeah.
My question was, are there any restrictions because of Shabbat of having activities on Saturday? Therefore, we'd have to move them either after dark or on
Shabbat
Sunday.
is, no, this is Friday night. So we're cleared. We're already scheduled for Saturday.
Oh, okay. No, because this is a conservative synagogue, isn't it? Or
It's
is it Reform?
Reform.
It would change.
But even if it was conservative, it would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for asking. We're good. Yeah. And I took care of it. So we're set. We're locked in for March 22nd. So we're fine.
Well, that's late in the day. That was during the day. It was.
So we need a field day coordinator. That's rather urgent. And we want to teach, I need your feedback on this, and the rest of the board does too. We have 2 courses that we want to offer, at least 2 this year. One, we want to offer again the Get On HF seminar, and it was very popular. We had about 20 students, went really well. We need at least 3 or 4 sessions for that. And what we're thinking is that we would schedule those a series of Tuesdays in a row. And I don't know who's interested in taking, some of you already took it. So this crew, yeah, I mean, even if you have a lot of experience, it was a great experience because of just the dialogue with each other, talking about all the esoteric things that Phil likes to talk about, like counterpoises. Counterpoises, yeah. So we're working on setting up a series of Tuesday evenings, like from 7 to 9 here, for that in the next couple of months, April or May. And then later in the year, Phil has agreed to teach his 2-part VNA seminar. Did anybody take that when he taught it a couple of years ago? That's a mind-boggling class. And it's really, if you have a VNA or if you're interested in VNAing, I turned it into a verb, Phil's class is a great class. And that would be 2 Tuesdays in a row. And those really need to be, for sure, consecutive Tuesdays so you don't forget everything by the second class. Is that fair, Phil? I mean, that's
Lift that veil.
there you go, nicely.
The real advantage of that class is it's not only about the network analyzer, but you'll discover that the most important thing in radio work, believe it or not, is the concept of reflection. That's how everything works. It's all about your coax. It's all about SWR. It's all about how the instrumentation works. It's all about how you measure impedance. So we cover those topics, and then we take the other side of the coin, and then we deal with how signals pass through filters, your coax, measuring the losses. For a $60 device, it's amazing what you get for your money.
That's what this is. Thank you, Phil. Any questions about that before we move to the rest of the business? Also, just as a reminder, dues are due at the beginning of the calendar year. So if you haven't remembered to pay your dues, go to Ham Club Online and pay them. Wilson wants me to say that. He made me say that. Any questions on Zoom? No, okay. All right. Treasurer's report? You have a microphone?
Hello again. Thank you, James. All right, very good. Let's see, where am I? Am I visible? Guess I can address the audience this way. Well, this is, thank you. All right, well, this is the River City. Nope, no problem. Let's see, very good. I'm checking my notes. So I did send an update to the treasurer's report on Sunday. This might not be it, but I'll read from what I have in my hand. So you could go to the next page. Oh, yeah, I think it does have my update. Very good, Carol. Thank you. So yeah, it's Wilson, your treasurer of the River City Arts Club, and want to welcome a new member, but he's been around for a while. This is Dave Reingold, Kilo 6, Mike Victor Juliet. So welcome to the club, Dave. I've got you, your dues are paid and you are registered on Ham Club Online, just like his check. I haven't checked yet. Let me look into that. Let me take an action item. Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. I think did we mate last time? Yeah. Very good. Well, welcome. All right. Do you want to have him introduce in just a moment? How's that? Okay. So we want to thank the evergreen donors, the faithful donors. We've got David, KM6GYM, and Sylvia and Tom, KS6WTF and Whiskey 6 Bravo Sierra. They're both out, I think, this evening, but we expect to see them next time maybe. And Larry, KC6TRH, they're all hanging in there, making donations to the repeater fund. So we really appreciate that. Our member count is unchanged from last month. I did have a typo last month of 188. I don't know how it got that way. I think it was just slipped at the keyboard, but it's really 182, and it was 182 last time, but it fluctuated because some members actually fell off the roster, and some, you know, just how it worked out. Any questions so far about the current status of members? I haven't seen a whole lot of activity on Ham Club Online recently, but it's still working. And if you go to the front page of our River City Arcs website, rcarcs.org, you'll find a link on the right-hand side, sort of down the middle of the page, where you can access the membership roster. I updated that on Sunday, and if you want to see what your current membership status is on there, you can do that just by clicking a button without going to Ham Club Online if you don't want to do that. So I'll be brief with the financial piece. We had $10,756 in the beginning of the reporting period, which was January 26th. And we took in $236 of, you know, customary receipts, including $150 of membership dues. We had a small amount of PayPal charges, some online services with Google. Our biggest expense during the reporting period was for this congregation Beth Shalom meeting room, which is $700 a year, I understand. And so that check actually cashed. And so that's why our total expenses are up around $743. So we closed out the month with a balance of $10,296. Nice thing is we're over 10 grand, so it's kind of a nice looking 5-digit number. The repeater fund appears healthy to me. In recent years, I've seen repeater expenses kind of come and go, a few $100s up to about $1,000 a year, I think, just kind of without being scientific about it. I haven't seen anything in a while. So it looks like the repeater is holding up pretty good, and there hasn't been a lot of, I know. Everything's expensive, right? And it's so good that we have a volunteer efforts keeping it going, because it's a very, resource intensive type of thing, right? So the general fund is sitting at 5724. So if you don't have any questions, that's all I got. And if nothing else, I'll turn it over to Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wilson. Wilson's really turned our books around. And so eventually Sylvia will step in, and it's going to be an easy transition. Tell us about yourself.
I was trying to avoid that, but I actually do remember coming here, maybe it was about a year ago, but I'm happy to come back, and thank you for the welcome. N6HA. Haven't been very active. I hope to be more active now, and I'm definitely taking the VNA class, so hopefully I got my tickets.
Very good. Excellent. Membership report and website activity. This is Carol. Social media. All right.
Okay, thank you, everybody. This is Carol Pop for Mike Delta. And these are web resources report for actually the past month. And it's just to remind everybody that, let me get over to, let me switch over to Zoom a moment here. Got to go over to full screen. Yeah, okay. Yeah, working satellites. Oh, look at this. March in radio history. Alexander Popov, according to the Soviet Union, was the first person to demonstrate radio wave transmission. That was in that was in 1896 in March, but Marconi did it in towards the end of 1895. But of course, I guess the news of that didn't reach Russia before that time. So they actually had a postage stamp in the Soviet Union to honor Alexander Popov. Next. March of QST. all of you who are ARL members, and I'm sure a majority of us are ARL members, and if you aren't, really considered joining the National Association. This is what came out in QST this month, and those of you who are members, make sure you check your digital version edition of QST. There are some really good articles in there. There's a call out to radio clubs, building a portable satellite station, which is what we're talking about today. Project for building a linear amplifier for QRP rigs, a 6-meter turnstile antenna, which is an omnidirectional horizontal antenna. And the cover story is Morse code in the theater, which is interesting. These young actors actually put on a theater production featuring a story about Morse code. The name of it is Static. So there's a really nice write-up in the QST magazine about that. Again, a de-expedition story about vacation on Pitcairn Island. Now, Pitcairn is in the middle of the South Pacific. Isn't that where, I don't know, there was some kind of mutiny on the Bounty? Yeah, there was some people who were, I guess, stranded on that island over there. The World Amateur Radio Day also is coming, and a review of ham radio QST 150 and 25 years ago. A reminder that our website is n6ha.org, and we try to keep that updated with all information about the club and also amateur radio in our community. And the Loomis Ham Fest, that's coming up Saturday, March 22nd, 7 a.m. I think we might have mentioned that already. There's coffee and donuts for sale there. Be sure to stop by and see me at the ARRL information booth, because I'll be there. And we may possibly have our division director, Tony Marson, coming up from Las Vegas, and he'll be there to talk to you all. They have mentoring tours, Elmer tours around the site during the Hamfest, so you can, people who are new can learn what's on display over there. Of course, it's at a ham radio flea market, so you're welcome to buy and sell stuff there. But there's a lot more things you can do there as well. There's door prizes every 15 minutes, free parking and admission. And the talk-in is going to be on the K6IOK FM repeater 145.13 with a -6 offset and a PL 114.8. So be there and be square, 7 a.m. Although some people are like claim jumpers. They try to get there at the crack of dawn, but try to be fair. I mean, they try to take all the good stuff.
When you get up at 4 in the morning, just don't go back to bed. Head to Loomis. And don't forget your flashlight.
Flashlight, exactly. And again, we already mentioned this, the contest with the River City Arcs. And they're going to be operating 20, 40, and 80 meters. Those are the 3 bands. Possibly, we're not sure about 80. But those are the only 3 bands that are active in this contest. And the N3FJP contest logging program, the club has a permanent password to activate those. So if you're bringing a computer, just download the newest version of that contest program for the SSB Sprint, and we will go ahead and put the password in. So every computer at the site here will be licensed to be able to use that. You don't have to have a license to participate in this, because we'll have control operators on site. And if you're a technician and you're scared to using HF, don't be, because it's your chance to get on the air and get some experience with this as well. And River City Arc supplies the pizza, and if you want to bring dessert, you're welcome to do that. I guess like a potluck, that'd be awesome.
That's a good idea.
And drinks, are we going to have drinks here too?
Like bourbon? No.
No. Soft
Yeah,
drink.
we'll get some sodas, and then we can have coffee and tea. We have
Soft drink.
unlimited coffee and tea. We're allowed to use the kitchen here.
Excellent.
So if somebody wants to cook dinner for everybody, I guess.
And
Papa Murphy, yeah.
And that's our chief contester picture up there. You can see.
Does everybody know what a sprint contest is?
Yeah.
Bob, do you want to explain how this works? Is this where you make a okay. Yeah. It's short, but it also means you can't linger.
Short and sweet.
Well, sprints are defined differently. Most of them, the common definition is it's a short contest. So this one lasts only 4 hours. This one's an interesting contest, and it gives you a little bit of a twist, because there are clues that you use, whether you put your call sign at the end of the QSO or in the middle of the QSO. And it's a little confusing, but it doesn't make much difference. We'll figure it out. This sprint is different because you have to change frequencies after you make a contact. So that keeps the people with, 50,000 watts of power and a huge antenna from hogging a frequency for the whole evening, and everybody's contacting that person. So you have to move after making one or two, depending on the circumstance, one or two contacts, and make another contact with another station. So it gives you a chance to make some points and, make lots of different contacts. So it's kind of fun.
Question? What was the
Yeah,
question?
I mean, it's very small movement. You just, yeah. But it's interesting.
Bring your spouses.
Yeah.
Bring kids.
Everyone
We're gonna
come, bring your
write
friends and your
all the-
spouses.
Go.
We're passing a microphone here.
If we're holding this out front with this access to this major thoroughfare, we might get some interesting walk-in.
All right, any questions about Carol's presentation?
We got more. Not
Keep
stop-
going.
Not finished. Again, Farm and Tractor Days. If you want information about that, you can go on their website. It's the Rio Linda Historical Association there. And it's going to be May 16th and 17th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the same Dry Creek Ranch where we're going to have our field day. And we usually have an HF station there too. Are you going to be there again, Kevin, this year? At the Farm and Tractor Days? Yeah. Okay, we'll see who else wants to volunteer. I think I might make it out there as well. Bob usually goes out there too and works at the Morse code stations. The kids absolutely love that. They love to try to Morse code. Again, we talked about, there are dates pending for the upcoming seminars, the Nano VNA workshop, and also Are You Ready for AHF? Those were really big hits last year. Coming club and area events. Again, we have our, well, I think James pretty much mentioned all these, and field day, so it's all there. March contests, and those are major contesters from the club here. March 8th and 9th, we have the Idaho, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin QSO parties. March 9th, we have the North American Sprint for Radio Teletype. March 15th, 16th, the Virginia QSO party. March 23rd, UTC, which of course here is March 22nd. That's the North American single sideband sprint that we're doing in here. And then March 29th is this UQ Worldwide WPX contest single sideband. And more information about these and many other contests are on that website, contestcalendar.com. Reminder about our nets. Tomorrow night is going to be our 2-meter net at 8 p.m. At 8:30, we do our 10-meter net, and then at 9 p.m., we do our slow scan television net on a 441.30 megahertz repeater with our YouTube live stream as well. And a reminder about our roundtable net on 7181 kilohertz lower sideband, Saturdays at 3 p.m., and that's also a big hit. This is just a report. I want to thank everybody who's a volunteer net controller because we are consistently getting good participation in all of our nets. And that's the report for February, all the check-ins. And we're always open to have new control operators. It's really easy to do it if you want to volunteer to do this. Just follow a simple net script, and it really builds your radio operating skills, a skill that's very useful for emergency preparedness. You may be called to be net control in a situation like that. Again, for our next backup repeater net will be March 19th, and hopefully we will not have the same confusion we had last month where we had both repeaters on at one time.
We should make Bill do it again.
Yeah, the problem was Russ couldn't find his password to switch on the backup repeater. I went and switched it on, not realizing that he had not turned off the main repeater. So we got that straightened out. Website activity for the month of February. Most views were, of course, on February 4th, and it was 73 on that day. That was the day of our meeting. And the most visited pages on homepage with 341 views. Then our nets page, our repeater page are about Us page, and the Tuna Tin S project page, which was a DIY radio builders group. That's our builders group project from 2021, and still has some interest there. Most of our hits are coming in through search engines like Bing and Google. We had 56% coming in through search engines, and 29% were direct hits to our n6ha.org URL. And again, the lion's share of our views were from USA. We had 9 views from Canada when we used to be friends with that country in the past, and 5 from the Netherlands, and we always get views from other countries around the world. And on social media, the YouTube channel has now 566 subscribers. That's went up 2 since the previous month. We had 851 views of different videos on our channel last month. And the top video that was viewed was the January meeting, which was the introduction to the QMX transceiver, 130 views. And then we had views for a couple of our SSTV nets. Bob's tower installation was number 3. And then this was one other talk from our HF seminars from last year, which was HF propagation made easy as pie. And on our Facebook page, we now have 1,162 followers. That's gone up 18. Our discussion group went down 1 to 126. Our Twitter page went down 1 follower to 166. And our Discord chat is 43 members. And anybody who wants to participate in Discord, it's awesome. You just send an email to us to contact@n6ha.org, and we will send you the invitation so you can join that little chat, which is on all the time, and we can just chat among each other here. Again, if you want to contact anybody at the club among the leadership, the board, or the officers, just send an email to contact@n6ha.org, and we will direct it to the appropriate person. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol. Any questions for Carol? Yes, give her a applause. That's a lot of work that you do to get that ready.
Yes, but
Thank you. Thank you.
we all enjoy it. That's the important
That's
thing.
right. Anybody? Oh, Nelson joined us, K6VDU. Hi, Nelson. And Rick, KM6MZY. Good. Any questions for Carol or the group from Zoom? All right. Any questions here? All right. Is there any other club business that we need to present? Neil.
I would like to mention our first report on our
Closer.
offering.
Closer. Straight into it like Beyonce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our Elmering efforts. We have taken the first steps to look into Hank and Gert's situation. A week ago, myself, Bob, and Walter went to their place and spent Saturday. And all that we solved the problem as was identified, but we identified the follow-up problem. And I'll let Walter, if you don't mind, Walter, telling them a little bit what you found and what needs to be done.
Yeah, we just we fixed some lower section of broken coax. I think the problem is up on the element of the beam where the matching box is, and we weren't prepared to go that high. So we fixed the lower portion, and we weren't getting good signal. So follow up, we'll get a ladder out there, safely secure it, and reach the box and see what it looks like up there. There's too much tape around everything. Can't really see whether it's just the connector to the box or whether it's something got stressed and pulled out of the box. But we did fix another part of the pole that on the clamps of the rotor was missing a center bolt, and that's why it was freely spinning. Okay. So we got that back in there too.
Thanks for doing that. And Neil, thanks for taking the lead on Elmering requests.
Just the first one. Yeah. We're going to, next week or this coming weekend on Saturday, if everything works okay, we're going to go there and do the follow-up. One more item. Carol had provided me with email of the gentleman that needed assistance putting up a satellite antenna on his roof. And I follow up on that, and I called him, left a voice message, and an hour later got a call back from him. And he was calling from a cruise ship in Mexico and indicating that that he had. The reason he came to the club and follow up with the club is because he saw the ISS contact, and he figured it was a good club to belong to. So he came to us, and I said, and then we dropped the ball because that was in September. But he said he's going. I think Sunday, yesterday, 2 days ago, he was going to go back in here. He said, "You guys made my day. Let's follow up on that." So we're going to do
Great.
that.
Okay, that's
Okay.
great. Thank you, Neil. Thank you. All right, any other club business? Did anybody bring a show and tell thing? Anybody to show and tell? Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think it's time for our amazing guest speaker. Yes, Bill. November 6th, Hotel Alpha.
N6HA. The clicker. So I'm November 6 Hotel Alpha, Bill. I've been licensed since 2022. Very new still. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. This presentation is riddled with spelling errors and other misinformation. So I'm glad I brought George to fact check everything I say. Yeah. Great. So yeah, we're going to talk about space communications and how to work satellite stations, essentially. So let's get going. It's not working. Oh, there we go. Good. So why work satellites? So it is a technical challenge. There's a lot of moving parts involved with working satellites. There's a very easy way to approach it, and there's the very difficult way, just like ham radio. You could go down a lot of rabbit holes. So I'm going to talk about actually a lot of those different ways you could do satellites. There's a lot of rare contacts. So some of the rarest contacts you'll ever get in ham radio, I think, might be on a satellite, because those satellites don't stick around for very long. Most of them are up there for about 10 years, if you're lucky, and then they burn up into the atmosphere. So you get some really rare contacts on some of these satellites. And then it's fun to utilize a very expensive asset. So the ISS is $150 billion. So it's kind of funny to use that to talk to someone. Like I talked to Kishore, and I could probably get him on Simplex. So it's fun to utilize that. And then it's technician friendly. So if you're a technician, you could work the satellites. There's really no restrictions other than just having a license. And some of the things we're going to talk about, actually, you don't need any license at all. You could just you could receive, and a lot of these things you don't even have to talk. And then if you're in an HOA, there's antenna restrictions. So you could just go outside when you want to make a contact and walk back in. So that's me walking outside to the middle of the street in my neighborhood and working in the ISS, or I don't know what I was working in there. But my neighbors have gotten used to it, of me walking out there periodically. I'm like, oh, he's talking to these astronauts today? And I was like, no, still haven't talked to any astronauts. That's a map of all my contacts on satellites. You'd think I'd be working HF, but those are all my satellite contacts. So you see a lot of Japan, all the way up in Europe. I cheated with some of these. We'll get to that, how I was able to get into Europe, but mostly, a lot of the USA. So our goals. So the goals of this this presentation, there's not that many. We're going to identify what kind of satellites you could use and what they could do, their functionalities and capabilities. We're going to talk about how to find these satellites, and more importantly, where are they in the sky? So you not only need to know when they are going to be around, but also where in the sky, so you know where to point your antenna. We have to understand Doppler and polarization, which is an important part of working satellites, and probably the complicated part of working satellites. A lot of people have issues with that. And then I'm going to talk about the equipment needed, the radios involved, antennas, things like that, and logging and recording. When I first started working satellites, I had no idea how to log one, and I actually took a little bit of research to figure out. Luckily, someone on QRZ had instructions for me, so. And I've found other things since then. And then the steps after, what do you want to do after satellites? There is a path to go to something more advanced. So we're going to start at the beginning. So what's a satellite? A satellite is something orbiting a celestial body. The biggest satellite for Earth is, of course, the moon. Does anyone want to guess what the second biggest satellite is? Yeah, the ISS. ISS is huge. That's the second biggest satellite we have. There's a lot of natural objects. There's natural objects like the Black Knight also. That's kind of interesting if you want to look that up. It's just some piece of meteor orbiting around. We don't know how it got there. But there's a lot of man-made satellites that do weather and GPS, military aspects, science. A lot of schools launch up satellites. So you'll see a lot of the amateur radio-related satellites are launched by schools, which is kind of cool. I don't know where they get the money for it. We'll get to that. So let's talk about the orbit types. So the majority of amateur satellites are going to be in the low Earth orbit. So that's only 1,200 miles above sea level, and yeah, the most of them are there. We had one that was in medium Earth orbit. That was a green cube. It's since died. It's still up there, but it's not transmitting anymore. And there's also geostationary orbit, which it's geostationary with the Earth. So as the Earth rotates, it rotates with us. So it's always in the same point of sky, which is really nice to make things easier. So with a low Earth orbit satellite, you only get like a 10-minute pass from acquisition to signal to loss of signal. The medium Earth orbit, 60 minutes, sometimes 70, depending on where it's at. And then the geostationary is always there. And there's a lot of other orbit types that I'm not going to talk about. There's a lot of smaller CubeSats getting sun synchronous orbit launched right now. So that's something to look at. And then polar orbit, I'll talk about that later. There's something coming up for polar orbit. This is just a scale of the different orbits. So I talked about low Earth orbit. So there's the moon on the far side here on the bottom one. That's not on this top one. And you see that the low Earth orbit is just a little blue part. So not a lot of space there. The medium Earth orbit gets a little further out, and the high orbit's way out there. That's where all the geostationary stuff is. So this is kind of cool just to give you a scale of what we're talking about. But the vast majority of satellites are launched in that low Earth orbit zone. It's just cheaper. So a lot of people ask me, how far can you talk on a satellite? So it depends on a lot of things. Mostly it's the orbit type, how far it is away from the Earth. So that defines the footprint is the two distances where you could talk and get into the satellite. So the two furthest distances. So this is a low Earth orbit. This is the ISS, I think, is passing over America. If you're on the fringe where it's like 2 to 3 degrees over here, you might have a hard time getting in to the satellite. If you have advanced equipment, you could get in. So I really say it's a little smaller circle than that. The medium Earth orbit, though, you could really work the world with that. That was green cube before it died. You could go all the way into Europe, depending on the situation. When it's directly over the Americas, though, you could get North and South America, depending on the path. And then there's geostationary orbit, which I spoke about before. It's always there. This one is right above Africa, and you get all of Europe and a little bit of East Asia. So that's pretty cool. I have a slide on that one, which is pretty exciting. So frequency and propagation. So yeah, how do you actually get your signal up to the satellite, right? Usually we're used to working HF a lot, and when you work HF, the signal bounces off the ionosphere and bounces back down. So luckily for us, VHF and above usually breaks through the ionosphere and goes straight up to the satellites. And you hear a lot of people talk about bands like K-band and KU and all this stuff. So it's just a way to break down the frequency range. The stuff we do for amateur satellites really focuses on VHF and UHF, but they are getting some things with the L band here soon. Starlink is Ka and Ku, so we're talking 40 gigahertz, which is, I can't even think about that. That's pretty high frequency. So let's talk about satellite size. They really popularized this concept of a CubeSat. So it's a standardized unit for these satellites. So this is a 2U right here. You can kind of see where it breaks up into two separate units. And then there's a 6U over there. And they're just squares that are 10 centimeters square units. And it really standardizes a lot of the hardware. So they're able to launch these things faster and cheaper and kind of work off of each other's designs. Instead of doing something complicated like NOAA 18, which is giant, it weighed 2.5 tons when it launched. And it's a big satellite. It does a lot of things, but these CubeSats are kind of making things a lot easier. I've seen a lot of schools launch these pocket cubes, which are 1/8 of the volume of a CubeSat. They're cute little guys, 150 grams, so they weigh nothing at all. So they've been launching these left and right, and there's a new one called Hades R, which I have a slide about. It's cool what they do with it, so that's pretty cool. And of course, the ISS is huge. It's the second biggest satellite, so like I said. And it took them 146 spacewalks to be able to piece it together with all the different parts. I think it's more than that, actually. So 990,000 pounds. So it's pretty heavy. It's not going to be around forever, too. I hear they're going to let it fall into the ocean in 5 years, sadly. There's a really cool kit from AMSAT if you want to build your own CubeSat. It's $400. It's a 1U. It's that cute guy right there. There's all the innards. They put it up for sale and it sold out in 8 minutes. So if you want another, you're going to have to wait a little while. It's pretty popular. I should have bought it when I heard about it. But it's open source, so if you want to build it yourself, there's the link down there, and you could download the Gerber files and go off and build your own. It's a cool thing. I'm thinking about doing it, so maybe if someone else wants to buy one, we'll do it together and assemble it. But I thought I'd put that up there. I'm hoping they can bring it back so I could buy one. So if you want to launch your own CubeSat, you could do it. Anyone could do it, actually. SpaceX does a ride-share program. You give Elon Musk some money, and he'll put your satellite up in orbit. The cheapest price is $300,000, so I'm not sure who's affording that. But there's a popular YouTuber that used this program to launch a satellite recently. He had a 12U, and it takes a selfie. You take a selfie photo, and you ship it up to the satellite, and it takes a selfie with the Earth in the background. So that's a pretty cool thing. He's a YouTuber. I don't know. People have been tracking it, though. It was, I think he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars making it. So it's cool, science. But yeah, so if you want to launch your own, you can. It's quite expensive, though. So let's talk about the type of amateur satellites. So what kind of things can you communicate? What kind of modulations? When you point your antenna in the sky, what can you actually work? What are your options? So we're going to talk about receive-only stuff to begin with. So you don't need any license for this. You could just get the proper equipment and you could work the satellite. So there's a lot of weather satellites where you could receive cool graphics like this straight from the source. Your local weathermen used to have to do something like this back in the day to tell you what weather's coming up. So you just use a simple V dipole, not inverted V. It's V like straight out. And it's about 137 megahertz, which you think, okay, I could probably use any radio to receive it. You can't. It has to be an SDR since the bandwidth is so wide. It's 34 kilohertz bandwidth. So an SDR, some basic software, you could use sat dump, and you could dump cool pictures like this. The sat dump up there on the right-hand side, upper right. And like I said, you don't need a license, so it's pretty cool. This is a low Earth orbit, so you have to be there when it's there, and it's an 8-minute pass. But there's another option if you want to get weather all the time. You don't want to have to wait for it to pass over us. So there's the GOES weather station. GOES, they're geostationary. They're always there, but they're a little higher frequency. This is 1.7 gigahertz. So you need a dish and a different setup, but your SDR will still work, and the same software will still work to decode the images. There's some examples there on the right. You get really cool imagery from it. There's 19 channels of imagery, so you have all kinds of different maps and different views depending on which lens they use and which camera. So that's pretty cool. You do need an LNA most likely, depending on how long the run is of your coax. An LNA is just a preamplifier to get the loss of the coax out. They launched 18, but there's only 4 left. So like I said, these satellites don't last forever. These are very expensive to launch. Any geostationary is expensive. So here's a cool map of all the stuff that NOAA's done, all the weather satellites that are up there still. You see the blue ring is the geostationaries. Goes east and west. I'm familiar with those. And then the red are the actual low Earth orbit ones like NOAA 15 and all the others. So they launch a lot of satellites, and you could use it free and decode it just to get the weather. So it's pretty cool. Another thing that's receive only is telemetry. So you can actually learn a lot about a satellite and the status of it just by decoding the telemetry. Although the format of the telemetry is a little different depending on the satellite, so you have to kind of look up the satellite to see how you decode it. Otherwise, it's just some bits, and you don't know how to actually do anything with it. This one on the right here is an example of green cube. GreenCube has all these different sensors on board that you could use to see the health of the satellite. So there's a magnetometer, a gyroscope, GPS time, kinds of cool stuff. Some satellite operators will actually give you a QSL card if you give them telemetry, especially if they don't have ground stations nearby. They want that data, so it's pretty useful to them. And you do need specially software to decode these packets. So you and it's specific to the satellite too. Every satellite's a little different, usually. Another receive only is a slow scan television. There's some people here that are in the slow scan television net. Similar to decode also from the satellites. You just have to know when and where to start decoding. These are some of the images I've gotten. That's from the ISS, those two up there. And then this one is actually from RS-40S, which is a Russian satellite from a school. They launched it, and they randomly do slow scan images also. So usually the robot 36 or PD-120 is the only ones I've seen that actually get transmitted by these satellites. You only need like a basic handheld, a bow thing will even work, and a way to record the audio from the satellite. So you could just like hold your phone up and record it, or I use a Kenwood connector and split the audio out, and I'm able to record pretty well. Get decent copies. Some of these are better than others. So another thing is amateur television, which is not slow scan. It's fast. It's like actual television. They send down 30 frames or whatever the format is. It's NTSC format. So it's moving images. They have a plan to implement this on the ISS, but they still haven't quite got around to it. The idea is that they're going to be able to actually see the astronauts as you do the school contact pass, which is kind of cool. It is a very complicated setup, though. I don't think there's a lot involved here. So you need a dish with a rotator because the ISS is in low Earth orbit. So you have to actually point a dish at it. You need a down converter and all this other stuff. So it's a complicated setup, and they still haven't actually implemented on the ISS. So we'll see how far they get with it. That'd be cool to be able to see the astronaut as you talk to them. Okay, so the real bread and butter, this is where we're actually starting to get into transmitting, is the FM repeaters. So just like a normal repeater that we have that we all talk on, it just happens to be in the sky. So you get a lot longer distance to be able to talk and make contacts. All of them are crossband repeat. I don't know of any FM repeater, voice repeater that is not crossband as a satellite, and that's just because of size. So you see right there on the upper right, there's cavity filters. That's an 8 bank of cavity filters for a normal repeater site. And that's how we're able to actually transmit and receive on the same band on an actual repeater. That's because you're only about 600 kilohertz away. So it'd be impossible to ship that up on a reasonably priced satellite. so this one on the bottom right, though, that's the transmit module for AO7, and it's a crossbander. So you can see it's a lot smaller, heavily shielded though, because the space is very dangerous. So there's a lot of radiation. A lot of satellites fail because of the radiation, so they have to shield it greatly. But much smaller because you just do crossband repeat. So when I say crossband, we're transmitting on VHF and receiving on UHF, or vice versa. So they usually, depending on the satellite, they either transmit on VHF or UHF, and then you receive on the opposite band. It's a shared resource with these FM repeaters, though. So if you ever try to work the ISS during field day, good luck, because you're not going to get in. It's very competitive depending on the hour of day. ISS could be hard to get some days, but if you go out there at like 11 p.m., you're going to hear yourself talk to yourself, which we'll get to full duplex, but it's fun to be able to test your equipment that way. FM repeaters, an HT and a Yagi are great. I've done it with just an HT with a 4th wave vertical, but I've done a lot of satellite stuff. So if you want to be successful, Yagi is a good way to actually approach satellites, and I have more on that later. Very good starting point. Everyone kind of cuts their teeth with FM satellites. That's where you start, and you kind of learn, and you get accustomed to satellites. And if you like it, then you move on to the more advanced satellites, which we'll get into also. The most popular FM satellites are the ISS, of course, and SO50 is very popular also. And you might be able to make a contact with this astronaut on the ISS repeater. Sometimes they actually pick up the radio and talk. Very rare, but it does happen. So digital and APRS is another type of satellite out there. Those are a lot smaller. So this is the Hades R I was telling you guys about. That's the picosat, 150 grams. And you notice the antennas, it's a tape measure, which is kind of cool. They're saving space. Very low power though. I tried to work it the other night and I could barely hear it, but people were making contacts left and right. Very congested because everyone's excited. This just launched and they just turned it on. So it's pretty cool. There's going to be more of these type sizes of satellites coming. But there's another version that's just digital. So most of the digital repeaters or digital satellites, they do APRS, which is the AX25 or some flavor of it. And the way they encode it's a little different. It's not always FSK. You could you just need a basic radio to be able to support APRS. So like I use my Kenwood that has APRS in it, so you don't need any special software or hardware. Otherwise, you just need a TNC to be able to actually use APRS. And the exchange is similar. We'll get into exchanges later of how to make the contact on a satellite, but it's the same thing just over text. There's some more advanced digital satellites that require SDR and HACRF, and I haven't gone into that yet, but they're out there. It takes multi-step decoding with GNU radio to do it, and that's too much for me right now. And yeah, if you want to actually work these APRS satellites, you have to change your path. Usually you set your path to, I don't know what the default is. Oh yeah, but what's the default for just normal APRS to look? Well, either way, you set it to ARSS for ISS if you want to work the digipeater there. And then if you're working Sonnet 2, you'd set it to Sonnet-2, and you'd be able to work APRS there. And, yeah. So the more advanced type of satellites you could communicate with is a linear transponder. Unlike FM satellites, it's not quite a shared resource. It takes a whole swath of bandwidth, about 50 kilohertz plus or minus, and it will repeat the entirety of that section of frequency back down. So that enables you to work pretty much all modes on these repeaters, on these satellites. So you could do FT4, you could do CW, you could do single sideband, pretty much anything other than FM, because FM would, if it's an inverting, so that's the other thing. There's inverting and non-inverting also linear satellites. So that means you transmit on maybe upper sideband. The non-inverting satellite would transmit it back down on upper sideband. But an inverting satellite would invert the entire signal over on itself and come back down as lower sideband. So the majority of these satellites are actually inverting. So you transmit on one. Go ahead, Phil. Oh, yeah. The question is, why would they invert? And from what I understand, the actual mechanism to invert it, it's much simpler to implement than non-inverting. There's only one satellite I know that doesn't invert, and that's the geostationary one. All the rest I've encountered are inverting satellites. And from what I understand, to be able to do that is just simpler. Maybe George knows better than I do.
There's a very interesting video on YouTube on the AO7 or the history of the AO7 satellite that goes into some details on those topics. And that satellite, how long has it been up now?
So yeah, it's a zombie satellite.
It was launched in like the 70s, wasn't it? And through a freak accident with the batteries, it came back. When it died, they thought it was lost. And the way the batteries shorted out was very convenient because now it comes on when it's in sunlight and it can be powered by. Normally, when NICADs short out, they short with closed. So if the solar panels are producing power, it's just shorted out. But the NICADs on AO7 shorted open. So when it goes into sunlight, the solar panels still power it, so it's on quite often. There's an excellent video on it on YouTube, and I highly recommend watching it.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, that's a great story. They that satellite actually used to do. It would do VHF and UHF, then also VHF and 10 meters as the linear transponder. So that'd be kind of cool to work it on 10 meters. Go ahead.
No, I within the last year I got my amateur extra, and they had a section of in there about accessing satellites. And I remember reading over the inversion, and the reason that they do it that has stuck with me is that if they invert it, they can handle FT4CW and single sideband together. And that's the good thing about it, because as it inverts, somebody who's on CW can get it. And then if somebody was on SSB, they could also get it. It's like within that bandwidth, it can accommodate everything.
That makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, to do this though, to work the linear satellites, you have to have a radio capable of single sideband. So that's kind of the issue with these inverting satellites, is that they shift on you. If you transmit upper sideband, it comes down as lower sideband. So you need to be able to receive both of those on either side. So it requires a radio that's a single sideband, or I guess if you have a CW only rig, you could probably work it if you have a VHF, UHF on it. I would say full duplex is required for working a linear satellite. We'll get into full duplex before, but essentially when you transmit, you can receive at the same time. And just because the technical challenge of working a linear satellite, you kind of have to find yourself on the bird when you go to transmit. It's kind of difficult to do because it shifts around on you. So it's really useful to be able to hear yourself transmit as you go.
Yeah, hi, I'm Carol, KP4MD. I have worked a CW on one of these linear transponder satellites using an FM radio, just keying the push to talk button on and off. And it actually worked.
Wow.
Yes. So you can use an FM radio to send Morse code on off keying.
Wow, that's very creative. That's really neat. I never thought about that. Cool. These are difficult to work portable though, for sure, because it's a lot of gear to handle. A lot of the rigs that do single sideband that are full duplex are quite large. We'll get into that later. But yeah, this is kind of where everyone graduates to after they do the FM satellites. They start getting into linear satellites because you have more bandwidth to work more people, and sometimes they get a further range than a lot of the FM birds. There's that. And then I said I'd talk about this. This is a special satellite. It's the only geostationary amateur satellite that I know of. It's Q0100. It's stationed above Africa, and you can see there the green line is the 10-degree line where you can make contact with the satellite, and the red is the 0-degree line. But some people have decided to try to work the satellite below the horizon. So there was actually people who went to Newfoundland, which is right there where that 50-degree line is on the left-hand side. That's the tip point of North America. They went there and worked this satellite at negative 0.9 degrees using FT8, which is pretty impressive. So I wish we had a satellite like this in North America, but we're not that lucky. If we did, that would be amazing. The frequencies are a little high though, so you need dishes like this. One is 2.4 gigahertz, the other is 10.4. So the setup is complicated, but once you get it pointed to the satellite, because it's geostationary, you don't have to move it again. So that'd be really nice. I'm surprised more people in that area don't work it. There is a DX club for this satellite, so a lot of people are getting DX on this satellite. And there's an SDR. So if you want to look at the SDR and hear people make contacts on it, it's pretty cool. Most of it is in a language other than English, but it's still neat to see. So I definitely encourage everyone to go check out the SDR for this geostationary. There's the band planned. There.
Okay, can't figure out. There we go. Takes it a second to boot up. All right, I didn't want to hold you up this long. I've actually worked. If you listen to the SDR long enough, you'll hear slow scan on there occasionally. And I've actually worked slow scan using the what's the software that does the loop back on the computer? The virtual audio cable. So I used virtual audio cables and the SDR site to decode the images that they were sending back and forth.
That's really cool. Yeah, I thought about using the loop back to do FT8 on that satellite, but I didn't realize the slow scan on there. I guess that makes sense. That's really neat. It's a special satellite, so I wish we'd have one of our own, but it's expensive to get something this high in orbit. And they've tried before with medium Earth orbits, and they've failed. So that's where we're at. So the important part. So let's talk about how to find the satellite. Like I said, not only do you need to know when it's coming, you need to know where to point your antenna. So there's a lot of things to help you figure out where the satellite is in the sky. So there's a lot of popular websites to do research on satellites. This is kind of the big database, though, of all the satellites available. So this one right here, SatNogs, you can see they have 4,000 transmitters in their database and 2,000 satellites. There's not that many amateur radio satellites, I wish, but not quite. N2IO is good also to see some satellites if you just want to do some research. And the most basic one is the NASA Spot the Station website to see ISS predictions for when things are coming. The SatNogs has a really cool feature where you can see the transponder status and actually the frequencies of the satellites you want to work. And you can also search those frequencies. So if you want to get a specific band or whatever you're looking for, you can search for it. So I like this website. N2IO is good too, but I like SatNogs better. AMSAT has a really neat website. There's a lot of good information on AMSAT, so check it out just for their articles and other things, a lot of bulletins and information. But they have this status page, which is really neat. It's color-coded, and it's community-driven. So as people hear satellites, they'll go to this website and report if they heard it or not. So the red is nobody heard it. Blue means they've heard it. The yellow is just telemetry. So usually there should be something there. They just heard telemetry. So maybe something's wrong. What you really want to see, though, is when it's purple on the ISS. Purple means that the crew is active and people were making contacts with astronauts. So I check this regularly. It could save you some time. So like if you're going to walk out there at 11 p.m. to work the ISS because you have a good feeling there might be astronauts. Oh wait, it's been red in the last couple passes. So you could check to see if you're going to be wasting your time or not. It is community driven though, so eventually these satellites do come back up, but it's a good indicator. So I like using it. So the way we even know where satellites are is the TLEs, the Keplerian KEPs, they call them, Keplerian elements. It's a 2-line format to figure out where a satellite is in space and where it's going to be. You could use the TLEs in your software to be able to figure out when the next pass is going to be. So there's the format. There's AO7 with the first line, the second line, and you can see here there's a breakdown of the first line where it's a line number, the satellite catalog. You don't need to know it. So I just thought they exist. You need to update these weekly in your software usually. They get old after a while because satellite orbits decay. They change depending on what's going on. Solar flares could affect the path of an orbit also. So they exist. So here's one resource. AMSAT does the daily TLEs there. You could download and throw into your software. Most software has this set up already. You don't have to deal with it. So some tracking software you could use on your computer. I'm a Windows guy, so I don't have a lot of Mac stuff listed here. I'm sorry, but you might be able to figure something out. SatPC32 is I guess the official tracking software of AMSAT. That's that one right here. It's a good tracking software. I think it's a little clunky at times. It's older, and you can only track a handful of satellites at once. So it's good, but maybe branch out a little bit. See what else you like. Orbitron is the bottom one here. Very fancy, more modern looking. I've had issues with it having all the frequencies for the transponders in there, but I'm sure there's a fix. I think, George, you run Orbitron for your tracking, right? Do you run Orbitron? No. Oh, you don't?
Hello, audio check. I run primarily gpredict.
Oh.
That's my favorite because you can set up tabs and groups. So I can have one tab for Ares satellites or one tab for NOAA satellites and so on. It makes it much easier than having one page with all the satellites on it. So if I want to only track ISS, I have a page just for ISS, and I can click over to it and watch it. And I just like the way it alerts me. I don't particularly use it for Doppler shift control or rotator tracking. I mean, it can do that. I use the CSN for that. So just for visual and for alerts and information, I use GPredict.
Yeah, I thought GPredict was my least favorite, but each their own. It's good software though, but I'm glad you said you don't use it for tracking or for your cat control and Doppler. So I haven't had much luck with GPredict with that.
Yeah, I just use it primarily for tracking purposes. It will do rig control. It uses a Linux program, an old Linux. Well, it's not old. I shouldn't say that, but it uses a Linux command line, and it works. But I find it to be a little resource intensive sometimes. So I use the CSN SAT. That's just a no-brainer nowadays.
Oh yeah, we're going to get into the CSN SAT. That's a good tool. So hopefully we'll convert all of you. Look for SAT is my preferred tool when I'm out in the field. It's an Android application. It tells you, has a huge database of satellites. It'll tell you when it's coming and where to actually point in the sky to get the satellite. So that's what the top right is there. You can see that red line is the path of the satellite. It's going to follow the way of the yellow arrows. And that little red target there is actually where I'm pointing the phone. So you could strap this to your wrist, and as the satellite passes by, literally use it to aim at the satellite as it goes through the sky, which I do. Makes things a lot easier. And it tells you the frequencies. So as you go, you can know the Doppler shift, which we'll talk about Doppler shift here soon. So it'll tell you the frequencies of the satellite. So I like look for SAT when I'm outside. So let's talk about the complicated subject of the RF of satellites. So this is probably the hardest part a lot of people have with satellites. The Doppler effect. Everybody, I don't know if everybody's seen this diagram up here, but I've seen it a lot. So the Doppler effect is that if you're ever standing outside and a car zooms past you, you kind of hear that, right? That's the Doppler effect in action. So as an object approaches you, the frequency is higher, and as it leaves you, it goes lower. So that's what this kind of diagram is showing here. That happens also at RF. So as an object, like a satellite's coming at us at 17,000 miles an hour, the frequency gets higher as it comes towards us. So the byproduct of that is when you go to actually receive these satellites, they'll tell you the uplink and the downlink frequency. But as you work the satellite, as you receive, when it first starts, you're going to have that frequency set higher than you would expect because of the Doppler shift. So in the case of UHF, it's about 10 kilohertz higher. The range, though, is 20 kilohertz. So for the ISS, you'd start at it's 437.81. And by the end of the pass, though, after the Doppler shift and it zooms past you, your frequency actually ends up being 437.79. So you've lost 20 kilohertz just as it passed by you. So on UHF, that's a pretty drastic shift. As you go on higher frequency, that effect becomes even greater. So at gigahertz range, like Starlink, I'm not sure how they even handle 50 gigahertz Doppler shift. On 2 meters, though, you really don't have to deal with it a lot, at least with the FM satellites, because of the capture effect. So it shifts about 3 kilohertz, but with a HT, you don't really need to do much. You leave the transmit frequency alone, and you just adjust the Doppler for the UHF frequency. Not every satellite, though, is that way. There's some satellites that don't transmit on UHF, they actually receive on UHF. So for the same reason, you'd have to adjust your frequency for the other satellites. You have to do it for transmit also, but in the reverse. So you can imagine as you transmit towards a satellite coming towards you, if you transmit on 440 megahertz, by the time it reaches the satellite because of the Doppler effect, it's actually going to be at 440.1 megahertz because of the Doppler effect. And they're not going to adjust their frequency for you, so you have to adjust yours down. So you would adjust yours to 439.99. And by the time it got to the satellite, it would be the correct frequency. So this graph here I have where the receive frequency starts high and ends low is the exact opposite for transmit. You start low and you end high because by the time it hits the satellite, you want to be at the right frequency that they'll receive on. They're not going to adjust it for you. I don't know what the Starlinks do. Maybe they're fancier. So that's a pretty complicated concept to deal with. A lot of the software I talked about before will do it for you. So you could do cat control for the Doppler shift. But it's worth going out there and trying just to play with Doppler yourself. If you ever try to get like an FM repeater, you could kind of just play around with Doppler in a way just to hear it, how it would sound like to be off frequency. As you slowly click in closer to the frequency of the repeater, you start hearing clearer. You kind of get that same effect in the satellite. So you'll be pointing towards one, kind of doesn't sound right. It should though, because you're pointing right at it, and you adjust your frequency down a little further, and oh, there they are. It sounds great. So you can kind of play with it by ear. But yeah, this is a difficult concept for a lot of people to handle when they first start the satellites.
A comment on the Doppler shift.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on FM satellites, it's really not that big of a deal. But when you get into the linear transponders, that's where it really starts to become challenging, especially when you're first getting into it.
Yeah, because it's you don't get the capture effect of FM. Your transmit frequency is very important also. Things will shift around on you. So there's some good videos of people working linear satellites manually outside, and the things they have to do to be able to tune in both VFOs to work them is quite amazing. I'm not there yet, so maybe one day. But FM makes it easy. Like I said, there's a lot of cool software to handle Doppler. Most of the ones I talked about before support adjusting Doppler, so SatPC32, Arbitron, gPredict. Ham Radio Deluxe actually will handle your Doppler for a satellite. You just have to say, I'm working this satellite, and it'll download those TLEs for you and set your frequency for you when the satellite passes by. A really cool tool that everyone is getting turned on to, though, is this CSN Technology SAT controller, which I have more slides on, but that's the interface there. You can see, what's a section of the interface? You can see it has all the transponders and frequencies for the ISS. You click it, and it will automatically start controlling your radio to set the frequency as it passes. It's a very cool tool, and it makes a lot of the computer usage completely go away. So you could go portable with this controller. I'll talk about it a little more later. Okay, so the other really, really difficult concept to talk about is polarization. So we're really familiar with linear polarization when it comes to ham radio. Most of our FM repeaters are vertically polarized, which is a form of linear polarization. When we work single sideband, VHF, UHF, usually we use a Yagi, horizontal polarization. A lot of these satellites actually use circular polarization. The reason they do that because they don't have to worry about the position of the satellite, it tumbling. It makes things a little easier. Because the mismatch between linear polarizations, it will end up in full signal loss. But a mismatch between circular and a linear polarization is only 3 dB of loss, which is not a lot, which is great. So a lot of these antennas you build or you purchase to work satellites, their goal is usually to get you circular polarization in some way. So there's a helical option, which is that one made with PVC. They just spin a piece of wire on a form. That one's pretty big, but a lot of dishes use a helical antenna. They're smaller, but you're locked into the polarization of the way you physically wind it. A better option, though, is to use a Yagi. Depending on how you feed the Yagi, you could change the polarization from either right hand or left hand polarization. So there's a cool diagram there up top of circular polarization right hand and left hand. Actually, it says right hand, right hand. Yeah, those are both right hand. Never mind. Yeah. Either way. So what else? So as you work a satellite, you'll hear fading. You'll be aiming at it. And let me get my aid here. So this is a Yagi here, for those who don't know. This is the Aero Yagi. So you'll be pointing at a satellite, and your tracking software tells you that satellite is right there, but you don't quite hear anything. If you just happen to turn your antenna just the slightest bit, oh, there's everybody comes in again, because just for some reason, hello? Because where it was in the past, your polarization ended up having a mismatch between you and the satellite. So just kind of giving a small spin, not only aiming where the satellite should be, working Doppler, and now also giving just a little spin to where you're aiming, you could kind of tune in the satellite and start getting full quieting if you're lucky. So I think that's why I'm so good at fox hunting. The first time I did a fox hunt, I found it first. So, and I started late. So that's kind of the trick when you do Armstrong rotation is, kind of just give it a little spin and eventually you'll dial it in. And that's why working from a tripod, look at you, Kishore, is a little harder because to spin it like that might be hard if you have it attached to something stationary. It is, though, tiring holding a Yagi for 8 minutes or 10 minutes outside. I do it a lot. That's why I want to stay inside where it's nice and warm. We'll get to the linear satellite setup soon, though. So what else? Oh, yeah. So another tip, as you work these satellites, you should always have your squelch completely off. You're going to hear a lot of static, and that's going to help you kind of pick up the weak signal when it first comes into your receiver. And then you start working polarization to really lock in, and the static should go away. But I listen to a lot of static working satellite. So I think all of us here like static at this point. You kind of have to. Did you have something, George?
Yeah, I had another comment on the polarization. If you're running a fixed station for satellite use and you have an azimuth and elevation rotor, you can run something called the polarization switch. There's homebrew versions, there's commercial versions available, and those mount up at the antenna and they allow you to change the polarization from left-hand polarization to right-hand polarization. They also allow you to run vertical or horizontal polarization. And I run those on my system primarily because I like to be able to use the same array. You've got this fantastic satellite antenna, and if you can switch to vertical polarization, now you can use it for doing repeaters or FM work. And if you go horizontal, you can use it for single sideband work. So it kind of reduces the number of antennas you need to run, and so one of the reasons I do it. Now you only have one feed line going up per antenna.
That's a cool feature of it. Yeah, there's 2 ways to get the circular polarization. Like George mentioned, one is the phasing to actually phase it. There's another way is actually doing spacing of the elements and just hardwiring the coax. But like George said, you don't get the flexibility to change the polarization on the fly, which is a really neat feature.
In my early days, I actually did it manually. I had a way of going from manual to from horizontal to vertical polarization. I had my cross boom slightly drilled off center, so the antennas were heavier on one side, and I had a rope going up to the light side. And when I wanted to change polarization, I'd go outside and untie the rope, and the antennas would just drop down, and then they would go horizontal. And when I'd pull the rope, they were vertically polarized.
That's cool. I know Neil's worked some of our repeaters using his circular polarized antennas, and it works well. Yeah, that sounds right, because you should only have a 3 dB of loss. So I do like the polarization switches, but they do have power restrictions depending on how much juice you want to put through them. I think the mini kits ones, they say 50 watts, but most people do 100. But you could buy very expensive polarization switches that give you more power. So I wanted to point out, this is the first way of getting circular polarization out of a cross polarized Yagi, is to give it feed line and space the elements physically apart by a quarter wave. And that will give you circular polarization. There's another way. You can actually use a phasing harness. And phasing harness will allow you to connect 2 antennas together to the same radio, and then also delay one of the antennas by 90 degrees. And that also gives you circular polarization. If you attach the phasing harness to some relays to be able to switch, then you can switch between which left-hand and right-hand polarization depending on which Yagi you are feeding. So you might ask yourself, well, matching stuff, this seems complicated, right? So I wanted to show you that you can't just connect 2 antennas together. I've seen a meme before where someone had like 6 antennas on their HT with a bunch of those Y connectors. So what actually happens is when you connect 2 50 ohm loads together, 2 antenna 50 ohm antennas, it actually ends up being 25. So there's me proving it right there with my nano VNA. There's 2 50 ohm loads, and together they end up being 25 ohms, which is already a SWR of 2 to 1. So good luck. So the way to overcome that is you use an impedance transforming line. So you use 75 ohm coax, which is like TV coax. I think we all have that lying around. And you cut it at a quarter wave for the velocity factor of the coax. So that's important. you don't cut it for a fourth wave of just free space. You have to actually consider the velocity factor of the coax you're using. There's ways with the nano VNA to test it. Hopefully Phil teaches us how to do that at his class, maybe. Okay, good. So yeah, you use a fourth wave of matching stub, and another fourth wave of 50 ohms to phase it. Make sure you feed it with equal distance 50 ohms afterwards. You'll have problems with your phasing. Okay, so equipment. This is the thing everybody loves to talk about, is what can you buy when I want to spend my money, right? So I got some money for you to spend. Here you go. So let's talk about full duplex. I think full duplex is a big game changer when it comes to satellites, FM or linear. The ability to hear yourself as you transmit is extremely important, and it makes you very more successful working the satellites. So I would encourage everyone to find a full duplex radio if they can. 2 radios will suffice, but a full duplex really gives you better capabilities. So for a long time, I was actually using two separate radios on my hip, one to receive and one to transmit. But it's easier to use one radio, of course. So they're a little expensive though, and not all radios do full duplex. You have to find ones that do. I have a good list if you're interested. I could share it with you of full duplex radios. There's a handful of HTs and mobiles and even less base stations. The last HT that was manufactured that does full duplex that I'm aware of at least is the Kenwood THD72. Used one of those, fetches like $450. I don't know why, but it's a really good radio. I have one, I really like it. The THD7 also is a very good radio. It just doesn't have a built-in GPS is the only difference. So, but people still have very good success working linear satellites, or sorry, FM satellites with those Kenwoods. What else? So yeah, the ICOM 9700 is kind of the gold standard right now for satellites. Everyone you talk to on linear bird is going to be running a 9700. It's just the radio to buy. I don't suggest it for everyone. It's not a wide receive on the 9700. I didn't realize that till I got one. So I like to listen to like FM radio stations when I'm not working people. So you can't do that with the 9700. It can only receive within the ham bands. It's kind of unfortunate. Another piece of equipment you should probably invest in is audio recording. These contacts are very fast and not always, reliable. So you might be able to work somebody, but then you'll forget it. You're outside holding a Yagi in one hand and a microphone in another, trying to adjust your Doppler, spinning your Yagi. You're not going to remember any of these call signs. So you have to record the audio. Here's my very complicated setup for my Kenwood to be able to record the audio from it. I have a Kenwood connector that does a 4-pin, the ring, was it TRRS, ring tip sleeve? No, tip ring sleeve, that's it. I split that into the microphone and the audio portion, and then I split the audio portion into my voice recorder and then my headset to be able to record everything I hear. Luckily, because you're working full duplex, you're going to hear yourself come down on the satellite as you work stations. So it's really cool after the fact to be able to listen to yourself, how you sound on the satellite. And you'll see if you have good audio quality. As you work the satellites, it's kind of hard to detect that you're talking in your own ear because it's so fast that the return trip time for a low Earth orbit satellite is 20 milliseconds. So it's very hard for your brain to discern that you're talking and also listening to yourself at the same time. But afterwards, you can listen to yourself. It helps to have a PTT button, so you don't really have to fiddle with your radio. And some really fancy radio support recording to SD card, the 9700 included. So that's something to seek out. Antenna. So there's a lot of antenna options. Some are better than others. I am biased with some of these antenna options, but I don't know, maybe somebody would have a better preference. So of course, there's vertical antennas like you have for your FM repeater work. Those can work if you have a very low gain antenna like a J-pole. If you turn on its side, it would work even better. Carol has been very successful doing slow scan decoding with her J-pole. Very good image quality with that. If you have a high gain antenna, like one of those Diamond X510s, you're not going to hear anything in the sky. So yeah, it could work in a pinch, but make sure it's not a high gain antenna. Rubber duckies, depending on what you're trying to receive, it may or may not work well. I've been able to get slow scan with rubber duckies when it's direct overhead and I have good things around with low noise. I was in Utah near the salt flats, right? That's the clearest I've ever heard the International Space Station. It was like they're right next to me. No loss or anything. I was on a balafang with a rubber ducky antenna. So I need to go back to Utah, I think, because it's kind of cheating there with all the salt they have in the ground. Another option is egg beaters. That's the top right here. These weird looking things that look like eggs, kind of. They have that ground plane, which is the real pokey part on the bottom, and then two elements that make a loop to make it look like an egg. They are omnidirectional polarized, and they kind of just shoot all the RF towards the sky. So they're really good at receiving things as it flies overhead. It's even better if you could put them on a 30-degree tilt and kind of aim them towards the satellite, because I've noticed with my egg beaters that I lose signal when it's about like 0 to 15 degrees off the horizon on either end. So it has to kind of be directly above for me to work satellites with the egg beater. Benefit though of egg beaters is if you don't move it, you don't have to. So it's kind of nice. It just stays there. There's a good kit from Halibut Electronics. You could buy it. I think they charge like, I think it's like $80. Don't quote me on that. You can make your own egg beaters. It's a very good option. Helical, we already talked about it. It's an option. I don't really recommend it, but you can make one if you want to. I think they're probably hard to homebrew. Everybody likes the Yagi. You cross-polarized Yagis. Like we said, you can switch the polarity of them. You get high gain in one direction. Yeah, they're great. So entry level, your first option is maybe this arrow antenna. This has 2 meters are the long elements and 70 centimeters are the short ones. This works really well with satellites. It's a little pokey, so be careful around small children. My daughter attempted to walk in this a couple times, so you have to be careful. Another option is the elk antenna. That's a log periodic, and people have success with that. I think it's a little hard to work with elk. I prefer the arrow personally. Here's the actual pattern of a Yagi. If you've never seen one before, the RF pattern. See how all the RF is in one direction. You're getting 12 dB of gain, which is great. And you can see on the right-hand side, that's kind of how it looks in the wires in free space. So let's go on. What happens if you make a really bad Yagi? I've been thinking about this for a while. Like, I want to build a Yagi. I'm not very good at building things. What if I made a really, really bad Yagi? So you notice that this version, very nice and straight. Everything's cut perfectly. This one has some issues. Everything's crooked. Some of these elements are actually not the right size. I made them smaller. They're all in different directions. What do you guys think? Does this still work? The last one was 12 dB of gain. What do you think we got on this one? Any guesses? 2, 4. Okay, let's see. It's 11 dB of gain. You lost a handful of dB with it looking like this. I was like, oh, that's pretty amazing. That's why they call it amateur radio, because you could be kind of amateur with your building. So this would still work really well. And I'm going to put that into practice right now. So we're going to build a Yagi, a very poorly built Yagi. So everybody loves the tape measure Yagi. Everybody's probably built one here at one point. If you haven't, it's just tape measures to PVC, and you put it together, and you work some like local repeaters or stuff. Yeah, Foxhunt's great. But what if we added a 70 centimeter section to work satellites? Because all the satellites we know about are cross-polarized or cross-banding. Let's add another set of elements. I wanted to use a single boom. I don't want a bunch of expensive PVC couplers, and we're still going to use that hairpin match, which is really hard to do. So here's me attempting it. I got some PVC, some tape measure stuff, my Dremel. I end up cutting the slits long ways in the PVC, as you can see, then cutting the tape measures to a point so I could shove it through that little slit in the PVC to make the elements stay in there. I drilled out this section to be able to add a popsicle stick to give me a little stability around the feed point. And you can see me soldering some wire there to build up the actual element for the Yagi. Here's the feed point. I'm using a BNC connector. I should probably use some tape to tape it down there. And there's the hairpin match. I've adjusted it since, but to give you an idea, it gives you just a little extra inductance to get you that match for the Yagi. And there it is constructed. Looks beautiful. Which one do you guys prefer? There's the there's the arrow and then the tape measure one. So the arrow, you can get this down at HRO for $200 with all the bells and whistles. Out the door with tax, you're looking at like probably $230. Go ahead, Phil. You have a question?
I think it's N6BT.
Close. How am I going over?
In any event, he built some Yagis and he had difficulty putting some of the elements in line for the various bands. And he'd actually stand them a foot or two above the boom where you think nothing would happen. They work perfectly. So a little skew in these element positionings does very little, if nothing. It's the resonant point of the element that's a critical issue.
That makes sense. Yeah, so I'm putting that to test here. I was actually able to make a contact on this with the ISS using a Baofeng to receive, no, a Baofeng to transmit, and I used a Kenwood to receive. My other Baofeng was throwing out spurious emissions, I realized, so I couldn't use that. But it worked pretty well. We're going to speed up because I'm told I'm quick for time. Rotators rotate your actual antenna. There's some expensive options, some cheap options. I homebrewed my own. You can see that one on the right-hand side. Ended up blowing out the motor for it though, or not the motor, the power supply for it. So I need to work on it. These actually rotate your Yagi, and you can use a controller, rotate controller to figure out where to point your Yagi. There's some very expensive options, but the SAT controller, like I said, is really useful. It could plug into this port in the back of your Yagi controller and actually tell it through your computer where to point your antenna. That's pretty useful. And it's portable. It has a GPS built in. Let's talk about logging. So there's grid squares. The whole Earth has been actually broken up into grid squares. It goes from AA to RR, and then each of those have numbers within them. We're in Charlie Mike 98, and part of the exchange is to actually tell which grid square you're in. We'll get to roving later. Each grid's about 70 by 100 miles. The exchange. So the exchange is kind of important. It's what you actually tell the person when you're making a contact. So the calling station will call CQ Satellite, November 6 Hotel Alpha, Charlie Mike 98. The caller will call you back saying November 6 Hotel Alpha, I'm Kilo Delta 0 Bravo Lima Zulu and Delta Mike 79. And you'll say, oh, Kilo Delta 0 Bravo Lima Zulu, this is November 6 Hotel Alpha, QSL. And then the station will give you a QSL 73 and you'll give them a 73 and that's it. It's very quick. This is voice, yeah. APRS is very similar too. So you type it out instead of doing whoops. With FT4, it's FT4. It's the same, similar thing. Etiquette's important. Make sure you follow the DX code of conduct. Don't break up QSOs. Wait your turn. Use the phonetic alphabet. Really helps when playing the log back to yourself, recording. Rag chewing is okay. I've rag chewed on the ISS late at night. Just make sure you leave time for breaks for people to break in. Logging contacts. It's really important to set your propagation to satellite. This is what I figured out. And you can name the satellite, but the key thing is you need to set the propagation to satellite. That's the difference versus normal logging. And yeah, that's Alan's QSL card up there. Yeah. That one's SO50. We made a contact through. I've contacted Kishore through ISS. So George through ISS a bunch of times. It's kind of funny to do. Roving. So roving is the concept of taking your radio on the road and making contacts as you travel, or traveling to grid squares that are rare to make contacts to help people. When you rove, you can actually stand between two grid squares. People can stand in 4 grid squares and make contacts. You just call it out that you're at this grid and this grid. When you go to log it, just log it as 2 separate contacts. So it took me a while to figure that out. And Gridmaster is really cool. If you're trying to work all the grids, you download this spreadsheet and you can say, I worked all these grids and cross them all off your to-do list. You can also schedule your own rover activations at this HamsAt website. Some station examples. So here's me working something with my trusty Yagi with my Kenwood handheld. And I'm using the Look for Sat app to figure out where to aim. Like I said, I'm adjusting Doppler on one radio to go down as I receive, and then figuring out where to point using the app. Leaving the squelch open is really important to be able to hear people. Linear transponder, so that's the next setup. This is Neil's configuration. The next step of using satellite is linears. You need a radio with full duplex that could do single sideband, so Neil has the 9700. For controlling his rotator, he has a SAT controller with the Leo pack of antennas. Those are hard wired to be right-hand circular polarized, but there's a kit to make it switch. And I hear it works really well, right, Neil? You have success? It's a good setup. It's very clean. Roving linear setup. So this is a very complicated way of doing things. I can't even fathom adjusting two separate radios for uplink and downlink while holding Yagi and figuring out where to aim. So this is a KX9X. He does a lot of good videos on satellite stuff. So you can look at the link up right there.
Toss in a rotor controller on top of that, and it gets real complicated. I used to, when I first started, I started with two ICOM 706s stacked like that and a rotator controller. And trying to operate all those simultaneously is a young man's hobby.
Yeah, that'd be hard. Lucky the 818s, 817s, those are super small. So he fits them all in this cool camera bag. And you see he's using the app for the Mac people. It's called GeoSat Watch. Costs $10 if you want to use that to track your satellites. There's an SDR-based option. This is really cool. He's using two transverters with a flex radio to be able to work satellites. Those transverters are very expensive. That's the bottom of the rack there. His entire shack is entirely clean. All the stuff is in a rack down in the basement. So it's probably the cleanest setup I've ever seen. This is from KB8CR. I've worked him on, yeah. I worked him on FT4 on one of the linear satellites. So I was like, oh, that's a cool setup. Next steps. So where can we go next with all this? So you should join AMSAT. AMSAT's a great resource, $44 a year. They have a really good journal, a biannual a magazine that comes out. There's events, it funds research. It's a great organization. Give them money. That's my 2 cents. There's other events. There's Walmart parking lots on the air, which is really neat. You go out to a Walmart parking lot and work satellites. There's really cool multipliers. Like I like the spelling bee one. So you have to get call signs that spell Walmart, like each letter from the call sign. You don't work a lot of people when you do a satellite pass, maybe like 5 to 6. So that's pretty cool. There's other ones. There's AMSAT Field Day, which overlaps with actual field day. And Fram2Ham's coming up, which is a polar orbit of actual manned crew. And they're going to be sending down slow scan images at 5 watts with an ICOM 705. So that's something to watch out here in the next month if you want to get some slow scan. And that's a once in a lifetime thing. I don't think they're going to do another polar manned mission anytime soon. EME is the very next step. So maybe someone else with more money knows about EME. I don't, but they're actually bouncing the signal off the moon. Earth is EME, and a very complicated setup. Go ahead, George.
There is an excellent video on YouTube called EME on 40 meters. And I highly recommend watching it. No, it's not 40-meter HF band. It's actually, they're using a 40-meter dish to do EME, and they go through the walk up. There's some very knowledgeable people there, and some call signs you'll probably recognize that did that.
Oh, that's really cool. I thought 40 meters also. That would have been impressive. These are arrays of 2 meters, antennas are 6 meters, and they're bouncing it off the moon. So that's everything. There's me and my daughter working some stations up in Tahoe, and this is the antenna I used for Green Cube, which is a medium Earth orbit satellite. I think that's everybody. I want to thank my wife for letting me be here, and George for fact checking me and teaching me most of what I know, and Neil, of course, for the photos too, and all the other stations. Any questions? I know it's late. All right. The question was, can we hear the Chinese space station? I don't believe so. They don't transmit over North America. They do? The question is, can we talk to this Chinese space station? There's a national space station. There's also a Chinese space station, which should be up in orbit longer. George is saying there's frequencies to talk to them, but I haven't heard of any person in North America speaking to the Chinese space station. It's supposed to be, but yeah, I haven't played. Oh, you have the ISS is still available to talk to an astronaut. you have maybe 3 to 5 years before they let it fall into the ocean, which is really sad. But so if you want to try to talk to an astronaut, now's the time to try, because it is very rare. I maybe see them on the repeater once every 2 months if you're lucky. Any other questions?
A question. So I've done voice with FM, but how do you do FT4 or FT8 to the linear? Is it you have to operate a radio at the same time, I mean a computer at the same time while you're doing this?
Yeah, essentially, you need a radio that's capable of single sideband to be able to do the FT4 and the digital modes on the linear satellites. And then either you could manually adjust the Doppler, which for FT4 would be impossible. You can't do digital mode like that by hand. So you need some kind of software controlling the Doppler of transmit and receive on your radio. Because transmit, even if you're transmitting on 2 meters or receiving on 2 meters, the Doppler really matters for the linears because you don't get the FM capture effect.
The CSN SAT that you showed, I was hoping you were going to go into more detail on that. I have to say that that's an absolute game changer. AMSAT allowed me, or it was Aries allowed me to use that during the Girl Scout contact. That was the first time that CSN SAT unit had been used for any Aries contact. And it worked absolutely flawlessly, and he's continuing to improve it. I call it a game changer. I can't even imagine going back to using PC control, especially if you're using like the 9700. The 9700 is unusual in that it has multiple CAT interfaces. So it kept the original hardware CIV. If you all are familiar with ICOM radios, they have the hardware CIV. It also has USB CIV, and you can use both those simultaneously. So it allows you to use the CAT unit. You plug the CAT unit into the back of the 9700. It will do all your frequency correction for you. And you can also use the computer for logging or any other CAT control as well. So, it's just an absolute game changer. And there's a lot of other features that it does that you just couldn't even cover in 5 minutes of talking. You can do a whole presentation on using just the CSN SAT. And it's what, $250, $225?
75, yeah. New.
Yeah.
I bought mine used from eBay, so I got to steal the deal.
To put that in perspective, the satellite controller for Yaesu alone is $1,200. So this thing is an absolute steal for what it does, and it's plug and play. It just works.
If people rove with this, they'll put a Yaesu rotator in the back of their truck, and with the CSN controller, it controls Doppler, your radio, or it does Doppler, does your actual rotator, does everything for you, which is really amazing. Any other questions?
I was wondering if you could reach out the ISS and Echolink.
Okay, what was the question? Sorry.
I was wondering if you reach ISS and Echolink.
Oh, Echolink. No, there's no Echolink on the ISS. You can watch videos of school contacts. Those are on YouTube if you want to experience it. But there's no Echolink on the actual satellites, the space station. That'd be a cool feature, though. They should think about adding that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Bert?
Yeah, you mentioned the full duplex, and I was wondering how that was the same, similar, or very different from having dual VFOs?
It's different. So you have dual VFO or even triple VFO, so you can receive on multiple radios at once, or multiple frequencies at once, but you need the ability to transmit and receive on each VFO at the same time. So a lot of like I have a VX6, or no, it was I can't remember the name of the radio on the spot, but I have a radio with dual VFO. You set it to 2 separate repeaters, but if you transmit on one repeater, you can't hear the other people talking on the other repeater at the same time, even if it's a different band. So normally 2 VFOs doesn't equate full duplex, sadly. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. James is asking if Yaesu came out with a new radio everyone's very anticipating. Yaesu is rumored to come out with a full duplex radio. That's all bands, all modes, kind of like the 705, but it's also full duplex. And hopefully at an affordable price. So a lot of the people who do satellites are really staring at this because you'll be able to work linear satellites with one object that's the size of a 705. That'd be kind of a game changer.
How long did it take you to get used to the full duplex, the delay, the propagation delay in your ear? Did it short circuit you the first time?
The first time was a little weird, but like I said, eventually you get to the point where you don't even hear yourself. So I know that there's not static anymore, and I can hear the chunk of the repeater, and then I know I'm in, and so I start talking. You could tell you're talking to yourself, but it is kind of weird the first time you do it.
I wanted to add that on the ISS, if you're just getting started, you can also do APRS on ISS is very popular, and they run. You make a lot of contacts doing it. They're very quick. I forgot the name of the program I used to do it. It's been around for absolutely ever. It's free. You can download it, and it's I don't know what else to say about it. But you'll find me quite often on APRS, and I also use the low power. Did you talk about the low power CW satellites only?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, those are excellent for setting up your system. If you want to check your Keplers before a pass, you can check them on the real low power CW satellites, and you'll be able to gauge how low on the horizon you can hear.
You mean the beacons? Just the beacons from the satellites?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's fine. Yeah. Any other questions? Neil?
Seeing the, we've heard Bill talk about talking about the contact with the space station that we made, and it was almost a year ago, on the 22nd of February, that we made that contact. There is a 4-minute video. I don't know if you're getting too late, or if there is any interest, and I have it queued up to play if there is any interest.
It's up to the group if they want a 4-minute.
Just a comment. That's it. No. There's a musical comment.
It's up to you guys. Are we good on time, James?
If there is a potential impact.
I'll sit down.
Carol, keep the volume up with them. It's a vehicle. Goes to the KPRA, then you can.
NA1SS, NA1SS from November 6 November Alpha, how copy?
A special radio call. Between the International Space Station.
Roger the 5x5, you're 5x5 as well. Please stand by for your contact with the Girl Scouts.
and the Girl Scouts from Troop 1089 in Sacramento.
My name's Alana.
For 10 minutes this morning, the ISS was close enough for astronaut Jasmine Mogbelli to answer their questions via ham radio.
What are some experiments you are working on? What is your favorite?
I'd say probably one of my favorites is one we just did that's using bone marrow stem cells.
What are you most looking forward to when you return to Earth?
Avery, I'm most looking forward to three things: seeing my little girls and my husband, my friends and family.
The Scouts and their leaders have been preparing for this day for months.
These girls really implemented all of it and made the decisions and took on all of those processes on their own.
From learning,
yeah, I've taken some extra science classes at Sac City College, and I'm super interested in STEM.
To building.
We were able to buy the parts by raising money through a GoFundMe, so like members of our community donated to make this project possible.
And practicing, with expert support from a local ham radio club.
Well, it's absolutely got to work the first time out. You got 10 minutes and that's it.
10 minutes that will stay with these high schoolers.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to be where you are?
As they plan for their futures.
It's okay to fail, and it's inevitable that at some point you will fail if you're trying to do anything that's challenging and pushing the boundaries, and that's okay.
Those words inspiring the next generation.
Like just hearing someone like realizing they're like a person too, like I could do that someday, I could be an astronaut.
To dream big.
So it's amazing to think about what else is out there, even like beyond or further than what I can even imagine.
And show what it means to be a Girl Scout.
I definitely know that Girl Scouts is more than just selling cookies.
With photojournalist Mike Carroll, I'm meteorologist Heather Waldman for KCRA 3 News.
They literally got an out-of-this-world experience.
They did. It's so cool.
So amazing.
A lot more than just selling cookies, although we love the cookies.
I loved all of their
Tiny
questions,
SA,
too. Well done.
Very well.
Tiny VNA, coax, and an ICOM HT. Who wants to draw the ticket out of Gert's? All right, look at your tickets, everybody. Just one ticket.
One ticket. Okay. One ticket. It's 1561166. I'm sorry. Correct.
Okay.
166. Okay. All right. All right.
All right. Thank you. Good. All right, Ken, congratulations. All right. I'm 165. I missed by one. I have 165. Oh, you guys have 167. 3, 4, 5, 6. What are you going to get? The coax. The coax. Very popular. Coax is very popular. All right. We need volunteers for field day. So send us a note if you're willing to volunteer. We need a little bit of upfront work, and then on that weekend, we need people, probably a bunch of us will rotate in, but we need people to be in charge, to have manage the schedule, and so we know how things are going to go. Phil.
One of the things that we've experienced with field day, and it's this way practically every year, no one wants to volunteer up front. We get to field day, there'll be 37 of us there to celebrate the field day activity and put up antennas. So the whole idea here is a little bit of preparation up front makes the rest of it much simpler. And actually, it's kind of a delightful experience. But you really need to get your head screwed on straight. It is the annual proof of amateur radio popularity and activity. It is our greatest moment, and everybody should think in terms of their wish to participate. Field day is a very, very unique experience. You won't regret it.
Thank you, Phil. Any comments, questions, ideas? All right. Well, it's All right, we're going to get to the Walmart. He's going to be, oh, Neil's going to be the greeter. KL7HQR has volunteered to be a greeter, which is good. All right, everybody, it's great to see you. I hope this is our second meeting here. This is working out well. It's nice to have like our own space that we can spread out. It's comfortable. Our next event here is just in a few weeks, March 22nd, Saturday afternoon, for the North American SSB Sprint. So that'll be fun. And then our next meeting, our general meeting, is March 1st. I mean, April, is it April 1st? April 1st, Eric Schwartz from Elecraft. All right, everybody, get some treats on your way out, and we'll hear you on the air, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Need a hand? Oh, you're good? Lay on that.